Hello and welcome to ExhibitCore. In this video I'm going to show you how to deal with transparent objects. Every real-time 3D engine has to deal with transparent objects in some way, and ExhibitCore is no exception. The Exporter plugin helps you to manage transparent objects. Let's inspect our scene first. I've got two panels, and these panels have transparent elements, as you can see. And let's look at the material. It's standard material with a 35% opacity. Okay, let's open the script. The script is able to recognize and correctly publish and bake transparent objects. It recognizes a bunch of shaders, a standard material, V-Ray material, ray trace, Arc Design, and a few more. You can look them up in the online documentation. Materials like multi-sub or shellac or other compound materials actually don't have transparency settings, so they are not recognized as such. We can have a look what the script sees as transparent objects, just to make sure that that everything is going to be okay. Go to the transparencies rollout and press the Show Transparency in Viewport button. This gives the scene symbolic colors, and they say that the green objects are opaque, so that's the framing and that's the V-Ray plane. Well, that makes sense. And that the blue objects are actually transparent. Well, that's also looking good. The red objects are unknown. There are no red objects, but for instance, objects without a material or objects with a multi-sub material are not recognized as transparent or opaque. He just doesn't know, so he will tell you. There are two ways to get this transparency into the ExhibitCore engine. The first way is just to export the objects with the transparent materials and let the script deal with them. Second way is to use a bypass, and this bypass uses a naming convention. Now let's look at this object here. So that's one of these panels. The name isn't panel so-and-so, but it is actually OP underscore and then a percentage. This will determine the opacity of the object, regardless of the material applied to it. So you can totally disregard the material and just use a naming convention to determine the transparency of the object. For this to be able to transport it to the engine, you need to enable the bypass transparency detection with the naming convention. You have to enable it. Please note that these systems are not compatible with each other. So in a single export you can either use the naming conventions by giving these names and enabling the option, or by letting the script deal with it, detect the transparencies. You can't have both in the scene. So that's that. Let's export this thing. I'm going to export these two panels. I'm unchecking the bypass here. So I'm just going to use the actual material and detect the transparency in there. I'm going to use the normal settings. I've got a name set up here. Let's select my objects and export this thing. It's going to ask me to save. Now it's going to bake the objects, render some previews and thumbnails, and I'm going to pause the video and come back after everything is finished. So rendering is finished and the objects have been uploaded, and here I can inspect them. And as you can see, the transparency works just fine. I can look through them, but they also have been baked. Here are the previews. and everything looks nice. So happy exporting with transparent objects.